Welcome, beautiful Sigma ladies. The moment a Sigma female feels too visible, she doesn't step back. She disappears so cleanly, you'll question if she was ever real. That line may sound dramatic, but here's a fact backed by behavioral psychology. Highly independent women are statistically more likely to avoid high-exposure environments because their minds process attention as a threat, not a compliment. And the Sigma female. She's practically the CEO of that instinct. She isn't hiding out of fear, she's dodging the circus. While everyone else is busy broadcasting their breakfast, their mood, and their grandmother's cat, the Sigma female is quietly slipping out of the spotlight like someone who just saw the electricity bill. To the untrained eye, it looks mysterious. To the overly curious, it looks suspicious. But to her, it's strategic peace. She knows exposure isn't just about being seen, it's about being dissected, misinterpreted, and sometimes even turned into a public hobby. And if there's one thing she refuses to become, it's entertainment for people who don't even understand themselves. So today, we're diving deep, really deep, into the 20 brutally honest reasons why Sigma females don't like exposure. Not the usual clichés, not the reused pseudo-mystical explanations, just raw psychology, quiet power, and a few uncomfortable truths wrapped in elegance, with a sprinkle of humor because, let's be honest, if the Sigma female had to endure society's expectations, she'd need a sense of humor too. Let's get into it. Number 1. Exposure magnifies every micro-expression. One thing about a Sigma female is this: she can control her words, she can control her presence, but she cannot control what people choose to read into her face. And that's exactly why she avoids exposure. When too many eyes are on her, every tiny shift in her expression suddenly becomes a full-blown conspiracy theory for someone else to analyze. If her eyebrow lifts half an inch, someone thinks she's judging them. If she glances away for a second, someone assumes she's bored or plotting. If she doesn't smile exactly when people feel she should, they label her cold. It's never what she actually feels, it's what other people project onto her. And those projections are exhausting. A Sigma female is naturally observant, analytical, and emotionally self-contained. She's not loud with her reactions or dramatic with her expressions. She processes internally, quietly, and calmly. But in a world addicted to overreading everything, her calmness becomes mystery, her stillness becomes attitude, and her neutrality becomes a problem to solve. Suddenly, everyone becomes an amateur detective trying to decode a face that wasn't hiding anything. Exposure also puts her in situations where people expect her to perform socially. There's an unspoken rule that if you're visible, you must behave in ways people find comfortable. Smile more, nod more, agree more, soften your tone, soften your energy. Sigma females don't do performance. They don't exaggerate themselves to make others feel secure. And because of that, their natural expressions get magnified into something exaggerated, dramatic, or completely inaccurate. Even worse, some people love using her micro-expressions as fuel for rumors or assumptions. A tiny moment of irritation becomes, she has an attitude. A flicker of disinterest becomes, she thinks she's too good. Her resting face alone could start a national debate if she allowed it. The truth is simple. She prefers to be where her expressions don't become entertainment or evidence. In private, her face means what it means, and nobody is turning her into a psychological puzzle. In public, her expressions become everyone's business, and she refuses to let her humanity become a spectacle. Number 2. Her moves hit harder when nobody saw them coming. A Sigma female's strength has never been in loud declarations or constant visibility. Her power sits quietly in her ability to move without being predicted, tracked, or studied. She avoids exposure because it ruins one of her most valuable advantages, the element of strategic unpredictability. When people don't know what she's planning, they can't interfere, interrupt, or imitate. And trust, people love to do all three. The truth is, many people become uncomfortable when they can't read someone. They want to know what she's thinking, what she's planning, and where she's going. Exposure would force her to reveal a roadmap she never wanted to share. Once people see her moves in advance, they start trying to insert themselves, influence her direction, or even sabotage her progress. She prefers to operate where the noise can't reach her and where opinions can't contaminate her decisions. Sigma females don't broadcast their goals, and it's not because they're secretive, it's because they understand human nature. The moment people know what you're working on, they either want to copy it, compete with it, or quietly root for it to fail. She avoids that entire circus by staying unpredictable. When she finally makes a move, it hits harder because no one had time to prepare their jealousy, interference, or fake applause. Another truth is that exposure robs her of momentum. When people watch her too closely, she feels the unnecessary pressure to perform instead of simply evolve. Growth becomes a spectacle instead of a personal journey. She would rather build quietly, fail privately, and rise without witnesses. Her progress becomes stronger when it's not interrupted by commentary or expectations. People often confuse her unpredictability with mystery, but for her, it's practical. When she moves quietly, her success isn't slowed by noise. Her plans aren't polluted by advice she didn't ask for. Her breakthroughs aren't surrounded by doubters pretending to be supporters. Her results speak the loudest precisely because nobody saw the process. And that's why exposure will never appeal to her. Her power was never in being seen, but in being underestimated until the moment she chooses to strike. Number 3, she avoids environments where people hunt for flaws. One of the reasons Sigma females shy away from exposure is simple. The world is full of people whose first instinct isn't to understand, but to dissect. The more visible she becomes, the more she invites judgment, criticism, and unsolicited analysis. And she doesn't tolerate environments that operate like flaw-hunting expeditions. When people watch too closely, every minor imperfection becomes a headline in someone else's mind. A pause in conversation is instantly labeled hesitation. A different opinion becomes arrogance. A tired expression becomes rudeness. Sigma females understand this better than anyone because they've observed it countless times. Most people aren't trying to engage. They're trying to find something to exploit, mock, or debate. Exposure amplifies that. She's not fragile, but she recognizes the energy drain of constant scrutiny. Being constantly evaluated for mistakes, inconsistencies, or perceived weaknesses isn't just tiring, it's strategically toxic. People start to believe they have permission to comment, advise, or criticize her life decisions without context. In environments like this, her natural freedom and authenticity are under siege. Sigma females are selective with their energy. They know that attention attracts hunters, not nurturers. When she's exposed, she's suddenly in a zone where every action is examined and every subtle flaw is magnified. Even the smallest misstep gets overblown because public attention never operates in nuance. It thrives on exaggeration. This is why she prefers privacy over applause. It's not about hiding, it's about protecting her autonomy. When she operates away from prying eyes, she can grow, act, and make decisions on her own terms. There's no pressure to conform, no audience dictating the pace of her life, and no constant judgment shaping her every move. For a Sigma female, exposure isn't freedom. It's surveillance disguised as validation. She thrives where she can evolve without someone turning every flaw into a story and every choice into a debate. That's the quiet power of her avoidance. She knows environments that hunt for flaws are toxic, and she refuses to enter them, no matter how flattering the spotlight may seem. Number 4. She dislikes the artificial warmth of forced social presence. Sigma females have a radar for authenticity, and nothing grates on them more than the shallow expectations of social environments. Exposure often demands that she perform friendliness, relatability, and charm on command, smile at the right time, laugh at the right joke, appear approachable. These unspoken rules of visibility are exhausting for someone who operates on genuine energy rather than obligation. She doesn't fake warmth because she knows people can sense it immediately, and worse, it undermines her own sense of self. Being exposed forces her to bend her natural demeanor to accommodate others' comfort. Small talk, performative gestures, constant reassurance that she is likable enough, and even obligatory social appearances become invisible chains. The Sigma female doesn't need to be likable to exist. She needs to be herself. Exposure places her in a position where her behavior is constantly monitored and judged, often for reasons she doesn't recognize as important. She's not antisocial. She simply values quality over quantity and authenticity over performance. In crowded spaces where everyone expects engagement, her energy is drained as she navigates the constant pressure to conform. Forced warmth dilutes her impact because it forces her to divide her attention between being true to herself and meeting external expectations. The result is stress, frustration, and a sense that the environment is suffocating rather than empowering. The Sigma female understands that real influence and respect never come from pretending to be someone you're not. The world may reward social performance, but she prefers the subtle power of being genuine, calm, and unbothered. Artificial warmth is a currency she refuses to trade in, because every forced smile or nod chips away at her autonomy. She avoids exposure not to hide, but to maintain control over her energy and her essence. Her presence is meant to be deliberate, not performative. The public stage, with its constant demands for artificial friendliness, isn't a platform, it's a trap. She thrives in spaces where engagement is optional, connection is real, and her authenticity isn't up for negotiation. That's why she shuns environments that force social warmth she doesn't feel, keeping her power intact and her energy uncompromised. Number 5. She doesn't share her process, only her results. One of the defining traits of a Sigma female is her respect for the process, but not for the audience. She understands that growth, effort, and transformation are private affairs, not entertainment for others to dissect. Exposure forces people to watch every step she takes, to judge her methods, her pace, and even her mistakes. She refuses that. To her, the process is sacred, and sharing it publicly diminishes its power. She doesn't feel the need to explain how she arrives at her decisions or how she achieves her goals. Others may be obsessed with timelines, milestones, and visible progress, but she knows that true mastery doesn't need validation. What people see, the finished work, the results, the final expression of her efforts, is what matters. Everything else is private strategy, reserved for her eyes and her mind alone. Exposure robs her of that control. When she keeps her process to herself, she maintains authority over her narrative. If everyone knows the journey, they begin to comment, critique, and even manipulate it. Advice, judgment, or misinterpretation can creep in, weakening the integrity of her evolution. Sigma females understand that visibility attracts not only admiration, but also interference. Sharing too much dilutes the impact of her achievements and gives power to people who shouldn't have any. Her restraint isn't arrogance, it's strategy. By revealing only her results, she controls the story and preserves the mystery. People are left in awe without fully understanding how she got there, and that unknowing amplifies her influence. It creates respect without dependency, admiration without entitlement, and curiosity without intrusion. Exposure tempts her to showcase effort instead of excellence, and she rejects that temptation outright. Her growth is private, her energy is protected, and her achievements speak louder than explanations ever could. Sigma females don't need applause for the steps they take. They only reveal the destination when it serves their purpose. That is why she avoids being fully seen in the process, keeping her power, her autonomy, and her journey uncompromised. Number 6. She knows visibility breeds expectations. She never agreed to. For a Sigma female, being seen is never just about being noticed. It's about the baggage that comes with it. Exposure automatically attaches labels and expectations to her presence. Leader, problem solver, motivator, inspiration. People assume she's ready to guide, fix, or perform, even when she hasn't agreed to take on any of those roles. The moment she steps into visibility, her autonomy is quietly compromised. Admirers think attention equals entitlement, and suddenly her life is no longer her own. She refuses to be co-opted by society's assumptions. Recognition, applause, or admiration can all be traps, because they come with invisible contracts that she never signed. She doesn't owe explanations, mentorship, or emotional labor to anyone just because she is competent, intelligent, or poised. The Sigma female understands this instinctively. The more visible she becomes, the more people feel authorized to insert themselves into her decisions, judge her choices, and expect compliance with roles she never agreed to play. Exposure also creates pressure to maintain an image. Once people assign labels, they watch for confirmation or contradictions. A Sigma female doesn't perform for anyone. She refuses to allow the world to dictate her behavior or measure her worth by someone else's expectations. Her identity is non-negotiable, and she protects it fiercely. She navigates life on her own terms, selectively engaging with those who respect boundaries, insight, and independence. To the untrained eye, it may seem like she avoids attention out of fear or insecurity, but in reality, she understands that visibility is a subtle form of captivity. Every gaze carries a silent demand, every compliment an obligation, and every spotlight a leash. That is why Sigma females master the art of being selectively seen. She steps into the light only when it serves her purpose, and retreats when the exposure risks turning admiration into obligation. Her power lies in her refusal to be defined or constrained by anyone else's expectations, preserving her freedom, autonomy, and ability to move through life on her own uncompromised terms. Number 7. Attention dilutes her power. Because it attracts performers, not thinkers. For a Sigma female, attention is rarely a gift. It's a test. The moment she steps into the spotlight, she immediately attracts people who are more interested in appearances than substance. Performers flood the space, eager to show, impress, or gain social currency, while true thinkers, the ones who respect depth, insight, and authenticity, often remain in the shadows. She understands this instinctively and chooses to remain where energy is genuine rather than performative. The spotlight is a magnet for distraction. People who seek validation will hover, comment, or demand engagement, not because they care, but because they crave attention themselves. Every glance, every interaction becomes a subtle performance, turning her environment into a stage where she is forced to compete with superficiality. Sigma females know that being surrounded by performers dilutes her energy, fragments her focus, and weakens the quiet influence she wields when she operates away from the crowd. In contrast, the shadows attract the real ones, those who think deeply, act intentionally, and value connection over spectacle. Here, she can move freely without interruption, strategize without commentary, and build relationships that are grounded in respect and understanding rather than admiration or envy. Her power thrives in these spaces because she is undistracted, unjudged, and unexploited. Exposure changes the dynamic. It shifts the balance from substance to show, from intention to impression. Sigma females are acutely aware that energy is finite, and attention misused can become a liability. She avoids being seen too much because she doesn't want her power siphoned off by people who cannot match her depth or respect her autonomy. Her brilliance isn't measured by how many people notice her. It's measured by how many people can engage with her on a level that matters. That's why she prefers the quiet, the unseen, and the selective, where attention doesn't dilute her power but preserves it, amplifying the impact only for those who truly deserve to witness it. Number 8. She's aware that people don't want to understand her. They want to categorize her. A Sigma female knows that most people aren't looking to understand complexity. They're looking for simplicity. The moment she becomes visible, society rushes to assign her a label, a role, a category that makes her easier to digest. Leader, rebel, cold, mysterious, genius. These labels are society's way of feeling safe around someone who refuses to fit a mold. Exposure forces her into these prepackaged ideas, and she refuses to comply. She refuses to shrink herself to make others comfortable. Her thoughts, emotions, and decisions are layered, deliberate, and often misunderstood by those who are content with surface-level observation. Being understood is a privilege, not a right, and the Sigma female knows this. People rarely invest the effort to grasp nuance. They prefer categories that allow them to make assumptions, gossip, or critique without truly engaging. Exposure accelerates this process, and she instinctively resists it. Every glance, every comment, and every move she makes in public is filtered through other people's lenses. They interpret her stillness as arrogance, her confidence as superiority, and her independence as detachment. These interpretations are rarely accurate, but the world acts on them anyway. Sigma females see the danger. Labels can trap energy, restrict freedom, and invite manipulation from those who feel entitled to define her. Her avoidance of exposure is a form of protection. She values her autonomy over the fleeting approval of others, and she refuses to participate in a system designed to simplify and contain her. Being categorized isn't just limiting, it's corrosive to her identity. By remaining selective about when and where she is visible, she preserves the complexity that defines her, moving through life on her own terms rather than being sculpted by public perception. The Sigma female doesn't just survive outside the box, she thrives there. She understands that labels are a form of control disguised as understanding, and she will never willingly surrender her depth to fit someone else's comfort zone. Number 9. Her silence is her shield and her weapon. A Sigma female doesn't need noise to assert herself. While the world rewards loud voices, overreactions, and constant self-promotion, she relies on quiet as both armor and strategy. Silence is not emptiness, it's deliberate control. It protects her from unnecessary interference and amplifies her influence precisely because it's unexpected. When she chooses to speak or act, it lands with weight and precision that most people can't match. Exposure is dangerous for her because it threatens this essential tool. The more visible she becomes, the more she's pressured to explain, justify, and perform. Her silence, which has been a shield protecting her energy and autonomy, suddenly becomes inconvenient to the expectations of others. People want answers, reactions, and commentary, and the quiet she mastered becomes a liability in the spotlight. Her quiet isn't passive. It's a weapon. In a room full of chaos, people who don't understand her are forced to react to the absence of noise. They misinterpret her stillness, wonder about her thoughts, and sometimes even overreach trying to fill the vacuum. Every word she finally chooses to speak carries strategic weight because it's unhurried, intentional, and controlled. Exposure dilutes that effect, making her weapon of choice available to scrutiny and interpretation, before it can hit its mark. Most people never learn the power of strategic silence. They fill spaces with sound, trying to prove presence, worth, or dominance. She, however, has learned that the absence of noise commands more attention than a million words. It creates anticipation, respect, and even subtle fear, all without a single show of force. That's why she avoids unnecessary exposure. Her silence is not just a habit, it's a carefully honed tool that preserves her influence, protects her autonomy, and allows her to operate on her own terms. When forced into constant visibility, she risks losing the very thing that makes her unpredictable, powerful, and untouchable. For a Sigma female, quiet isn't weakness, it's mastery. Number 10. She doesn't want her value to become public currency. For a Sigma female, her worth is measured in depth, integrity, and independence, not in likes, applause, or attention. Exposure threatens this balance because the more visible she becomes, the more people assume they are entitled to her time, energy, or approval. Public attention turns personal value into a form of currency that everyone thinks they have a right to spend. She refuses to allow her essence to be auctioned off to those who haven't earned it. Visibility creates an illusion of accessibility. People start believing that because they can see her, they can touch her life, emotionally, socially, or intellectually. Every compliment, glance, or acknowledgement becomes an unspoken claim. For someone who thrives on autonomy, this is suffocating. She doesn't operate on the idea that being admired obliges her to perform, explain, or compromise herself. Her value is private, deliberate, and self-contained, not public property to be mined for validation or entertainment. When others attempt to spend her attention, she sees it clearly. People are less interested in her authenticity and more interested in what they can extract from her presence. Exposure amplifies this problem because it broadcasts her to the wrong audience, those driven by entitlement rather than genuine connection. A Sigma female protects her worth by limiting visibility, ensuring that those who gain access to her life do so through merit, not circumstance or convenience. Her refusal to let her value become public currency is also strategic. It preserves her power and influence because scarcity commands respect. When people realize she isn't freely available, they stop taking her for granted. Her energy becomes something rare and consequential, not a constant, easily consumed resource. For her, exposure is a threat, not because she fears attention, but because she understands the subtle ways people devalue what is too accessible. She keeps her worth locked away, revealing it selectively, ensuring that it remains her most potent tool. Public scrutiny and entitlement have no place in a life governed by autonomy, intention, and carefully preserved value. Number 11. She understands that people don't attack what they can't see. A Sigma female knows the world is full of people looking for targets, people whose ambition, jealousy, or insecurity drives them to test boundaries and exploit weaknesses. Visibility makes you easy to analyze, predict, and manipulate. She avoids exposure not out of fear, but because she understands the power of being unseen. Anonymity is not a weakness, it's a deliberate strategy. When she moves quietly, observes silently, and acts without announcing her intentions, she becomes untouchable in ways others never can. Being visible invites interference. People feel entitled to comment, judge, and influence what they can observe. Every step she takes in the open is scrutinized, and every decision becomes fodder for opinion or criticism. A Sigma female refuses to hand over that leverage. She values freedom and control above recognition, and the shadows provide a natural shield. She knows that enemies, critics, and opportunists can't strike effectively if they don't even know where to aim. Her anonymity also amplifies her unpredictability. When people can't see her, they can't anticipate her moves. Her successes appear sudden, her strategy invisible, and her timing impeccable. The less exposed she is, the more weight her actions carry when they finally surface. People are left reacting rather than controlling, which is exactly how she prefers it. This tactical invisibility extends beyond avoidance. It's about energy preservation and autonomy. Exposure often demands performance, explanation, or compromise. By remaining unseen, she avoids wasting time and energy defending herself, justifying her choices, or negotiating boundaries with people who shouldn't have that access in the first place. For the Sigma female, the lesson is clear. Power lies in being untouchable, in letting the world underestimate her until she chooses to reveal her strength. She doesn't need applause, validation, or constant attention. What she needs is the freedom to move strategically and the ability to strike with impact when the moment is hers. The unseen Sigma female is not hiding. She's mastering her domain in plain sight. Number 12. Her depth doesn't survive the shallow gaze of the crowd. A Sigma female's complexity is one of her greatest assets, and she knows it doesn't translate well under public scrutiny. Crowds don't process layers, nuance, or subtlety. They consume surface-level traits and digest personalities into simple, digestible snapshots. Exposure forces her to flatten herself, to translate the richness of her thoughts, emotions, and strategies into something that the masses can quickly understand, judge, or comment on. She refuses to compromise her depth for the comfort of others. Being fully visible requires performing in a way that society can categorize. Every choice, word, and gesture is examined for meaning, often stripped of context and interpreted through the lens of shallow assumptions. Her natural complexity, her quiet intelligence, her strategic patience, her intricate emotional awareness becomes invisible to those who prefer simplicity. Exposure turns her multi-layered existence into a caricature, and she has no interest in being reduced for public convenience. This is why she operates in spaces where attention is selective and engagement is intentional. She doesn't need large audiences to validate her worth or amplify her influence. Instead, she surrounds herself with those capable of appreciating the subtlety and depth that define her. In these private or controlled environments, her ideas flourish, her strategy thrives, and her energy remains protected. She also understands that complexity is a form of power. When people can't fully comprehend her, they underestimate her, which allows her to act without interference. Exposure invites oversimplification, and oversimplification invites control, expectation, and intrusion. By avoiding visibility, she preserves the integrity of her inner world, ensuring that her depth remains intact and her influence remains strategic. For the Sigma female, crowds are not a platform. They're a filter that reduces her brilliance into something shallow. She refuses to dilute herself for an audience that can't understand her, protecting the richness of her mind and the subtlety of her power, operating quietly but with far-reaching impact. Conclusion. Sigma females are a rare breed, complex, independent, and fiercely protective of their autonomy. They don't shy away from life out of fear. They step back from exposure because they understand the subtle costs of being too visible. Every glance, every expectation, every forced interaction chips away at the freedom, depth, and power they've carefully cultivated. From strategic silence to the preservation of inner complexity, from controlling who gains access to their energy to thriving in environments where depth is appreciated over spectacle, the Sigma female operates on principles that most people never fully grasp. Her avoidance of exposure is not about hiding. It's about choosing where to be seen, how to be understood, and who is worthy of witnessing her presence. She moves quietly, yet her influence resonates loudly in the lives she touches and the spaces she dominates. She refuses to be simplified, performed for, or commodified. Her brilliance, her strategy, and her authenticity are preserved because she knows that visibility often comes with strings attached, and she will never allow her essence to be leveraged by those who lack understanding or intention. Understanding a Sigma female means seeing beyond the surface and respecting the invisible structures that protect her autonomy. It's about recognizing that true power is not in being constantly seen, but in being selectively understood. Every step she takes is deliberate, every boundary enforced, and every moment of quiet strength intentional. In a world that values noise over nuance, her restraint becomes a form of dominance, her privacy a shield, and her unpredictability a weapon. If this deep dive into the mind and world of Sigma females resonated with you, make sure to stay connected. Subscribe to the channel to uncover more insights into the hidden strategies of the most independent minds. Don't forget to like this video if it opened your eyes. Leave a comment sharing your thoughts or experiences, and share it with anyone who needs to understand the quiet, unmatched power of a Sigma female. Stay sharp, stay aware, and remember, true mastery is often unseen.